Okay, we got a final plan, and thankfully this is going to be a lot easier than the last one. I talked about cutting out pins on the tube sockets, and I had to do that here because there just physically isn't enough space to fit a resistor in between the bottom of the socket. I suppose it would help if I had that in the light. Physically isn't enough space to insert a resistor between the bottom of the socket and the ground, which is embedded in the circuit board. Not to mention that normally, when you bench test this guy, it sits like this. So I put the trim pot here. I can't measure voltage on the bottom side. So this was really helpful doing these leads and these resistors here so I can bench test it all and make sure it works. With everything easy to get, and I can do it while it's installed in the chassis, because obviously when this circuit board gets screwed down to the chassis, you have no access to the underside. So, but that was what I was worried about, making this project a lot more complicated by trimming out extra pins on these sockets here. But I don't have to do that, actually. I'm taking out these components and the traces between resistor here. This is R1 and pin 2 on the first triode, and pin 7 is the second triode in there, and this R70. Just by removing those resistors, I have dedicated traces and through holes that I can just stick jumpers through. So that's what I'm going to do. We are going to remove C51 here, R1, and I've lost track of, that's the one that goes into our pin here. And then I'll actually probably take out a lot of these little components just to add them to the collection since they're going to be abandoned. I don't keep resistors because this is like thousands of resistors for $10 or something. So I don't worry about those. And these are metal oxide 1%. Accuracy, so they're better than anything. They're low power though. So anyway, then we remove the resistor that comes off the treble knob on the tone stack. That's R69. And then when I remove this gain potentiometer, that'll free up space, and that will lead to the only tricky part of this build. Once I take this guy out right here, I'll have a good mounting surface, and the form factor is the same. Here's my 1 mega ohm volume pot I want to add. So the form factor is the same. That's great. The only thing that isn't great is the center pin on the potentiometer is part of the ground trace on this circuit board. And I need the center the center pin to actually go to the input, the grid on this second triode. So ground isn't going to help us at all. So I think the best way to do that is to actually shave this off, and I'm going to just snip it off and then file it down so that you can see there's a shoulder. Trying to get it to stand in the right. All right, do it with fingers. You can see there's a shoulder on each of those leads, and the shoulder rests flush on the printed circuit board, and that creates the proper standoff distance. So if I can file that center pin flush with the, it's not Bakelite, whatever that plastic is, then, the focus. Will it work? Come on. It's trying to focus on the diagram. Okay, apparently this isn't going to work. There you go. All right. So the center pin, just cut it off and file it down flush, and then the shoulders on the outer ones will create a standoff so that that center pin won't touch the ground trace. I could try cutting out the ground trace, but that's more trouble than it's worth. More focus issues. Okay. So once I do that, then we'll just solder a jumper right through the through hole on that center pin, bend it backwards straight behind the potentiometer body, and I'll get some of these components out of the way, and then just run the jumper physically down into the pin, the hole that was our 70 here. And so I'll have a wire coming off that new potentiometer, and it'll go wherever 70 is. I think it's this one. Yeah, that one. So anyway, just nibbling that off and filing it down is going to be the only bit of tomfoolery. But compared to what I did on the other ones, like epoxying that in the center and trimming out pin leads, this is easy. So good news, yes. This should only take maybe a couple hours of work. I'm not particularly fast. So got my component removal list, component installation list, the jumpers, where they need to go between those holes, and yeah, this hopefully will go pretty fast. Let's see how it goes.